I am so grateful that I took this blue chip tonight because I have so many things to work on. And on Commitment Sunday, if you go to Trace, I was able to give my depression over to God, and that is what this blue chip represents. And He is the one who is going to help me defeat it, defeat Satan, defeat his minions, and defeat depression. So I'm very, very grateful to have this opportunity. But tonight I'm going to talk about the road I took as a food addict and how that started when I was very young and moved into adulthood, and how Accelerate Recovery really saved me. And well, not CR, God saved me. I was born June 29, 1970 in tiny Connorsville, Indiana. I grew up with my parents, who, by the way, just celebrated their 56th wedding anniversary, an older sister and a younger brother. Our father was a lapsed Catholic who nearly became a priest. Really glad he didn't. And our mother was a faithful Baptist. Quite the combo. Then this little Baptist girl married a good little Catholic boy. Oh, the irony. My sister and I were only 18 months apart. I idolized her as younger sisters do, and she despised me as older sisters do. Our brother came along when we were 9 and 7, respectively. There was the usual sibling rivalry, and my sister and I took great pride in torturing our little brother. This was the 70s. To say money was tight is a little bit of an understatement. We ate a lot of hamburger back in the day because it was the cheapest meat available. We got pizza once a month or so, and our mom baked treats for us when she could. There was never soda in the house unless it was some kind of holiday or celebration. And we were stuck with Roman meal bread because white bread was too expensive. It was a rare treat to have pudding for dessert or to come home and smell fresh baked cookies. My mom was a genius in the kitchen, stretching every dollar to make every meal as good as she possibly could. She does not get enough credit. Because of our restricted food options, whenever we visited with my grandparents, they took us out to eat at a restaurant. There weren't that many options in 1970s Connorsville. We had a Burger Chef, a Long John Silver's, a drive-in, and an MCL cafeteria. But we were always thrilled because it meant soda pop and dessert. We could get whatever we wanted, and I often binged on sweets. It was pretty clear I'd be a sweets freak for the rest of my life. Growing up in a Christian household was a blessing. I found the love and salvation of Jesus Christ at age 8, and I got baptized on that same day in August of 1978. However, the main catalyst for my food addiction happened in the summer and fall right before that. I started puberty at 8 years old. The medical term for this is precocious puberty. I was in no way prepared for the changes this would make in my body, nor was I ready to deal with them. This, of course, led to relentless teasing and bullying, and I had a growth spurt. Yay. Became very tall and put on a lot of muscle because I was an athlete. I had always enjoyed playing sports as a kid, but now none of the boys would pick me to play basketball or kickball or soccer, and none of the girls really wanted anything to do with me, so I was kind of a freak. I wasn't invited to birthday parties, nobody wanted to play with me, and I became socially isolated, except for my best friend Jimmy. Jimmy was always there. He stood up for me to the other kids, and we cultivated a really special friendship. As it turned out, we had been going to the same church since we were 3 years old. We just didn't know it. So it was natural we became friends. Jimmy was an artist, and I was a singer. We were both bookworms, which of course did not endear us to the other children. Almost every Saturday, our parents would take turns driving us to the roller rink for the day. And there we would both be subjected to unrelenting taunts and jeers, and we drown our sorrows in French fries, Pepsi, popcorn, and candy. Then in 1982, right before I turned 12, my family moved from Connorsville to Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's a bit of a culture shock. Connorsville had a population of around 10,000 at the time. Fort Wayne's population at the time was more than 200,000. I was sure we were going to live in a ghetto and get killed by gangs. I had such an imagination. We moved to the southwest side, which is middle class affluent, and I started middle school. If I thought the bullying in Connorsville was bad, I was not prepared for what was to come. Within the first 2 months, my official nickname was Moo Cow, thanks to my locker mates. My personal belongings were always up for grabs. I had a winter coat ruined, a calculator that my father gave me smashed to bits, and my purse stolen over and over and over. I ate alone in the cafeteria when I failed to make friends. By the middle of 7th grade, I had found 1 or 2 friends who ended up being fake friends because they took the personal information I gave them and then started rumors about me. I just couldn't fit in. And I also couldn't fit in my gym shirt because I got too tall. That school had to keep special ordering me t-shirts because by that point I was actually taller than most of my teachers. Every day when I came home from school, I binged on ice cream, ravioli, sandwiches, anything to try and make the pain and loneliness go away. High school was no better. I found some really good friends. Really, we were just a clique of weirdos. But I have all of them still to this day. I joined Campus Life because it was a Christian group. I figured I'd be safe. I was wrong. My leaders were awesome. They were so good to me. But while the kids treated me very nicely at the meetings, they were ruthless and cruel at school. The teasing and bullying continued throughout high school, and I kept eating. I was nearly 200 pounds when I graduated high school in January of 1988. I moved out of my parents' house shortly before my 19th birthday. I was in college at Indiana Purdue University in Fort Wayne, and my dad had taken a job in South Bend, Indiana. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to change schools. I didn't want to be under my parents' rules anymore. My mom did not like that. But my father said, yep, it's time for her to become independent. Let her go. Even though I had been a Christian for more than 10 years at that point, I had a rebellious streak in my late teens and early 20s when I ran from Christ to be one of the cool kids. This led to years of gluttony, self-abuse, and estrangement from members of my family. I had friends who smoked weed, drank like sailors, and even snorted cocaine. I kept away from all of it and became the permanent designated driver and babysitter. All the while, every day was a new opportunity to eat myself into oblivion. My favorite food was pizza with a nice cold Pepsi. I'll take a Coke if there's no Pepsi around. And ice cream or cake for dessert. Since I worked for Domino's Pizza and got free pizza and pop on every shift, I ate more pizza and drank more soda in the 4 years I worked there than I had in my entire life. Even on my days off, I stopped at Domino's to take advantage of my employee discount. And this resulted in a top weight of 315 pounds when I was 20 years old. Throughout the early 90s, I finished my English degree but couldn't find a job in the field. I ended up working in fast food and retail for another 10 years. During that time, I also worked for the Fort Wayne Comets minor league hockey team selling souvenirs. It was awesome. I was surrounded by all these good-looking athletes. There was hot dogs, popcorn, and endless soda to be had. But just like high school, these good-looking guys were bullies. They were really mean. There were 1 or 2 players I managed to become friends with, and one who I'm still friends with today. But I was a joke to most of them. More eating. I was diagnosed with depression in 1992. It took years to find the right combination of medications to help me. During that time, I continued eating an enormous amount of food. I struggled with suicidal ideation every time my meds were changed. Some of the meds made me gain weight, some made me lose weight, and that made me depressed, which made me eat. It was a vicious, vicious cycle. After several latent suicide attempts, I thought I was done. I was destined to be alone for the rest of my life. In 1996, I found my way back to God when my dearest friend of more than 30 years, Jennifer, brought me to church at the chapel, which would be my church home for 20 years in Fort Wayne. There, I ran into one of my hockey-playing friends. I was shocked. Most of these guys were beer-drinking, womanizing frat boys. So to see him there and be immersed in God's word again, it felt like coming home. I felt much like the prodigal son of Luke chapter 15, who came back to his father humbled and contrite, only to be lavished in love and wealth. The following year, my husband Wyatt and I went on our first date, got engaged, and got married, all within 7 months. Our friends and family were sure we would crash and burn. I was 280 pounds when we got married because I had made an effort to lose some weight. But I had finally found someone who loved my heart, my mind, and my soul. I was not letting him get away. We celebrated our 25th anniversary last July. A few years into our marriage, I discovered that Wyatt was addicted to pornography. It was incredibly hurtful. He begged me not to leave him. I looked him in the eye and said, I promised you I would not leave unless you were drunk, doing drugs, or cheating. I didn't consider this cheating, but he did. He never stepped out physically, but he considered his addiction spiritual cheating. Matthew 5:27-28. But I tell you that everyone who gazes at a woman to lust after her has committed adultery with her already in his heart. This verse drove Wyatt's assertion that he was cheating. But while I was processing all of this, I realized that Wyatt wasn't alone. He was attending Celebrate Recovery to help him learn about and cope with his addiction. Though it was hard, I also had a confession to make. During my early 20s, I had become addicted to pornography through a boyfriend. For 7 years, I struggled, and that included years after our marriage. I would be the ultimate hypocrite if I didn't forgive Wyatt for a sin I also committed. I told him the truth, forgave him fully. I only asked that he be honest if he slipped up, and promised that I would be honest if I did. As the years passed, I saw a lot of wonderful changes in Wyatt. He was becoming more and more the man I knew he could be. He invited me to Celebrate Recovery several times to deal with my various habits and hang-ups, but I had such severe anxiety, I couldn't stand the thought of sharing my deepest secrets in a room full of strangers. I struggled daily with my food addiction, though I had finally found my formula, calorie tracking and regular exercise to lose weight when I wanted to. I got down to 230 pounds. I thought life was awesome. We had adopted our daughter, Ariana, had a nice home, a big fluffy puppy named Luke, and jobs that we loved. Then I got pregnant, something we weren't supposed to be able to do. We were so excited. Our families were stunned but thrilled. Unfortunately, our daughter, Laura Ann, went to heaven at just 16 weeks. After delivering her tiny body, all I wanted to do was cry and sleep and mourn. My friends and family had to force me to eat. Quite the turn of events. I learned later in therapy that this was just as bad as overeating, and still considered an eating disorder. A year and a half later, we were pregnant again. Our son, Andrew Wyatt, passed at 22 weeks. I was so worried about Wyatt and Ariana and my parents, my siblings, and everyone else, I stopped eating again. I just felt like I didn't deserve happiness. If God took my children, I must have done something terribly wrong, was how I was thinking. After so much pain, I decided to withdraw from the world. My husband and daughter suffered more than I did. They needed me and I let them down. We moved in a new house in 2015, leaving behind the bad memories of the old house. I saw our move as a new start and decided that maybe now was the time to try Celebrate Recovery. But my first visit was fairly non-productive, nor did I seem to fit into a small group. I wasn't ready to give up control, and it seemed like Celebrate Recovery took forever before you saw any improvement in your life. I was a skeptic. In 2019, I went on my first discipleship walk, which is where you get away from it all in the middle of nowhere with no cell phones and simply convene with the Lord. It was amazing. During one of the activities, I was told to nail my burdens to a cross, literally. It took me no time to write the words, "addicted to soda pop," on a piece of paper. Yes, I have a food addiction, but the soda pop was the addiction that led to my being diagnosed with diabetes. When I grabbed the hammer and the nail, I began to weep. I cried openly as I nailed my soda addiction to the cross. 35 years of never being without a soda, another of my attempts to disguise pain. It was a cleansing moment, like nothing I had ever felt before. After I returned to my study group, I grabbed the unopened Pepsi I had left on the table, walked it back to the cooler, grabbed a bottle of water, and I haven't looked back since. Do I still drink soda? Sure. But with the power of Jesus, I can skip it whenever I want. This event proved that I needed to tackle my addiction with the power of Christ. Though I hadn't gained back any weight, I still had an eating disorder. I came to realize that only He had the power to save me. I threw myself into Celebrate Recovery and admitted I was powerless over my addiction and my life was unmanageable. I simply couldn't control my addiction anymore, and I needed to build a support system. It took me a while to find a small group, but I kept trying out groups until I finally joined this amazing group of women who shared so much of themselves and their stories that I could relate to. We developed deep trust and spiritual relationships that deepen every week. I'm so undeserving, and I love them all so much. Once I found my group, I was itching to start a step study. Working the steps was one of the most raw and intense spiritual experiences of my life. My small group prayed for me and showed me through their sharing that I was not and never would be alone in my Celebrate Recovery journey. I had found my forever family. During step 11, relapse, I had a powerful realization. My conscious contact with God was minimal at best. Even after more than 40 years as a Christian, I was still only scratching the surface of His power, of His support. Isaiah 1:10 says, "Listen to the Lord. Hear what He is telling you." So simple. Yet I could not let go of control long enough to hear His words and allow them to work in my life. By working the steps and beginning a devotional, I continuously found messages from the Lord that directly related to my issues every single day. Not a day goes by that I don't read a verse, read a chapter, hear a song, or sing a song that helps me face down my addiction. My favorite song is Diamonds by Hawk Nelson, which we sang tonight. He is refining in His timing. He's making diamonds out of dust. He's making diamonds out of us. That song always reminds me that even though Celebrate Recovery is a great place and an outstanding program, everything is in God's timing. This was never truer than when I found a fabulous sponsor, outstanding accountability partners. My sponsor was a true godsend. At our first lunch together, we shared our stories, and they were really uncanny. She and her husband had met, dated, and married within 9 months, just like Wyatt and I had within 7. We had so much in common. She encouraged me to go ahead and continue the step studies, and I did. The ladies in my step study group became more than friends. We are sisters. We made discoveries together and found strength in praying for one another every week. It is glorious that these wonderful, wonderful ladies continue maintaining contact with one another. We text and chat and see each other on Facebook every day. And I found even more support, and the journey continues. The second step study. That second step study gave me some great new accountability partners and dear, dear friends, one of whom is in the audience. Susan, I love you. Even though COVID tried to keep us apart, we met via Zoom every week. The evil one would not be stopping us. The most inspiring thing that helped me in recovery was the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. It struck me one night after saying this prayer hundreds of times that I was working so hard to change me that I missed the message that there are things about me that I cannot change. That was an amazing moment of clarity and relief. I no longer had to judge myself or beat myself up or put pressure on myself. I can only do what I can do, and the rest is up to God. I felt like someone had lifted a boulder off my back when I came to that realization. I was spending so much time and effort badgering myself that God couldn't be heard. When I was still and listening, He spoke to me and gave me strength. My life verse is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's simple, but it reminds me that I'm not God. I am not strong. My flesh is weak, particularly this week. My spirit is in jeopardy in this world. All of ours are. My God is the everlasting power that defeats all evil. Though we have rough patches and lose our faith, even if for a moment, God never abandons us. He is our loving, kind, merciful, heavenly Father who doesn't see the flaws or the failures or the falsehoods. He doesn't see our self-destructive, self-hating, or self-defeating ways. He is judge without judgment and our protector without pause. He releases us from our hurts, habits, and hang-ups and brings us hope. If you're new here tonight, thank you for having the courage and realizing you can do more through the strength of Christ than you ever could do alone. Let me share something with you. I want to show you something. Usually I bring this with me, but it would have been really awkward. This is my Letterman jacket I earned in high school. Okay? It's a reminder that despite all the bullying and attempts from Satan to drive me to suicide, I still achieved a great deal. A varsity letter, chevrons for music, and patches for being a sports manager. Even when things were darkest at my most vulnerable time, God had my back. This program has not only changed thousands of lives around the world, it has changed me. It has changed my husband, and our relationship has blossomed because of Celebrate Recovery. I encourage you, embrace the steps and principles you've heard here tonight, and allow the love in this room to wash over you. It can hold you and give you strength you never knew you had before. We call it a forever family for a reason. Celebrate Recovery is not just a first step. It's a journey. And it's a journey you would never guess that you could take. Keep coming back. And thank you for letting me share. God bless you.